Hey everybody, this is Beth Wilson. I'm the Pulaski County Horticulture Agent. Today we're going to talk about Crinum lilies. These are not your typical day lilies or magic lilies or anything like that. They're a different species altogether. So let's get on with the program and let y'all know about these wonderful plants. I will tell you that if you do want on my list to get updates about upcoming programs, you certainly may by texting that you see on the screen to that number, and you'll be informed about any upcoming programs that I might have. All right, so let's talk about Crinum lilies. And what in the heck are they? They are bulbous plants. They do create a bulb, and that's how they're propagated, that are very closely related to amaryllis, which is what we think about as a Christmas flower. Got a lot of species in this one genus. I already said they are propagated by bulbs, and the range of habitats that this lily can survive in is very diverse, from deserts to underwater. They will make these really big underground bulbs that'll intertwine into clumps. There's been a guy down in South Carolina who grows these things and sells them, who I've been talking with quite a bit. And, you know, in some cases, to remove a bulb that's been there, or a bulbous mass that's been there for, say, 50 years, you know, you got to get a tractor to pull it out. So just so you know what you're getting into. But they're beautiful plants. So let's talk more about their attributes. It does produce this, as you can see on the picture, a rosette of strap-like leaves. And like peonies are kind of the thing that in northern cities and towns that you always find in cemeteries or old homesteads. That's what the Crinum lily is in the South. It's the same sort of thing. These are very, very long lived. You will see the house may be long gone, but you'll still see the Crinum lily there that was planted years ago. They'll even be in ditches sometimes. So yeah, it's a really interesting plant, and we think of them as being a southern plant. Kentucky's not exactly south, but we can certainly grow some varieties and species of this. So I would encourage you to give these a shot. Like I just said, they do grow in many climate zones to the Northeast and the Midwest. The species that we use in the garden are mainly from South Africa, but we do have one species that is native to the US. And there are some types from Asia, but most of the ones we're using are from South Africa. And it's kind of interesting that they came to the South more than northern areas, because that's where the slave route was. And a lot of these people who were brought over unwillingly, they brought their Crinum lilies with them. If you get a good Crinum lily, they will usually be fragrant. So that's just an extra plus. All right, so Crinum is a kind of a harsh word for a lovely little plant, but it comes from the Greek crinum, that means lily. Our Native American Crinum is a Crinum americanum. Imagine that. And it's called southern swamp lily sometimes. So it's out of our hardiness zone in Kentucky. We're in zone 6. Some of Kentucky's in zone 7, the very western tip. So this one's not going to be not going to overwinter for us. There is another one called Crinum bulbospermum, and we call this the Orange River lily. And that's because it came from the Orange River in South Africa. It divided South Africa from the country above it, which I don't know what that is. I'm sorry, I don't know my African geography. But this one is hardy to zone 6 with some protection. And then back in the 1800s, a guy named Dean Herbert made a cross, and that cross became the Crinum herbertii. And that's what we now know as the milk and wine lily. And it is one of the most cold hardy. My grandmother had these lilies at her home place. I say lilies, she had one big clump. And that's kind of how I got interested in these. And of course, she's been gone for probably 10 years now. We still own the property where her old homestead was. And the lily does fine without anybody doing anything. And so when I talk to my friend, I say in South Carolina, his name is Jinx Farmer. He's got a Crinum nursery and will sell you bulbs. He said that he thought that my grandmother's, was probably the Herbertii. We also have Crinum Pallii, which is another cross, and it is extremely cold hardy. And the picture on the left shows the album variety, which is a nice white selection if you do like that. And this was a map that came off of Jinx Farmer's website. And this is where he knows that some of his bulbs have gone and where they are successfully being grown. Their nursery is down in South Carolina, and he is selling them all across the United States and into zone 5. So some of these are going in zone 5 and are being successfully grown. All right, so how do you get a bulb? The best way, I guess, is to dig one up from a friend or at an old home place. And that's cheap and it works. That's how I got one of my grandmothers to come to my house. So that's certainly an option, but do get permission if you can. You can also buy one on eBay or Amazon, but I'm just here to tell you, you don't know what you're going to get, but they will be cheaper. But a good reputable nursery, and again, I'm putting the plug in for 3 that I know are very good nurseries. The one is Jinx Farmer, which is where I got these 3 bulbs. I've actually purchased these before doing this program, and they weren't cheap, but they were huge. And I'll show you here in a minute how big they are. But also the Southern Bulb Company in Texas grows several different species and varieties. And Brent and Becky's out of Virginia, I've always had great luck with their bulbs, especially the spring flowering bulbs, and they're out of Virginia. And just to give you an idea of what these bulbs look like, this is how big they are. Can you see this? All right, this is my hand, and that's the bulb. This is a good softball size at least, and maybe bigger than that. The bulbs you get from a reputable nursery will be of size, which is important, but they'll also be good quality, and they do the disease resistance, or they'll be sure that they're sterilized before they come. All right, so what do you do when you get your bulb? You want to plant it, whether it be spring or summer, and on the bulb you can kind of tell where or how far up you need to bury the stem. There's a little line on there that kind of demarcates between the upper part and the bulb part. And my finger there on the rightmost picture and up in the top picture kind of shows where that is. So you're going to plant it pretty deep depending on how big that bulb is. The guy that I got these from in South Carolina, he said that a lot of the bulbs you'll get that are tennis ball size and larger. They may flower the very first year. If they don't, you shouldn't be too disappointed. But the bigger the bulb, I think the better the chance that you'll get a flower the very first year. He also mentioned that this is not like a daffodil. You plant it in the next year, you have a great display. This is a long haul sort of bulb. He said you have to treat it more like a shrub. And so the first year it may look a little puny and just kind of getting used to its new home. But by the second, third, and fourth year, it's going to look a whole lot better. And of course, you're going to have more flowers and that kind of thing. So just keep that in mind. Most of these are going to bloom better, of course, in full sun or part sun. But we'll talk about shade in a little bit, but I would certainly plant this in some full to part sun. The first year is going to be important. You do want to keep it watered, make sure it's got enough moisture. But once it's established, it is definitely drought resistant. So keep that in mind as well. But you will have to kind of get it through that first summer. And these are notorious for not wanting to be moved and don't like it when it's disturbed. If you disturb it to dig up, an offshoot to propagate it, that mama bulb may not flower the next year or something like that. So It doesn't like to be disturbed, so try to find a place to plant this and kind of forget it. Containers are great for crinums. A lot of these crinums, they're called ditch lilies, and so they can take they like the moisture and they will kind of run. The root system can be quite big, but you can sure do crinums in containers. That should not be a problem at all. You can see Queen Emma there on the left picture. She's got some really nice, more bronzy color and very upright foliage. I'll tell you, the foliage that my grandmother's has, which is probably the Herbertii, it does kind of flop, but to me, it's not awful looking. It's not, it's aesthetically pleasing to me, is it. So anyway, so you can go that route. There are also some more diminutive crinums that like the one on the right that you see there, the mini hewn, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but this one's only going to get about 2 feet tall. There are smaller ones than that for small gardens, but we'll talk about that in a minute too. But it has very upright foliage as well. You will notice when you look at some pictures of these that the leaves do kind of tend to flop. So if you like that more upright presence of the leaves, then you definitely would have to choose the right cultivar. So once again, if you want to, when you plant these, you can plant 2 or 3 bulbs depending on the size per pot. You want to make sure the pot is the container is the right size for your crinum bulbs. But basically it's going to act like, if you were to plant mint outside, you never plant mint outside and let it do its thing. You plant it in a container and keep it in bounds. Same way with this. In the most ideal site, these can become they're moderately aggressive and will make more. But on the other hand, if you stick it in a container, you're going to contain it. And so if you want to use them that way, you certainly can. So he's got, Jinx has a little booklet that he put out, and I bought it, and he said this is his suggestions for what to pair with crinums and containers. And you can see the list there, coleus and daffodils and salvia. But I think it's interesting to note the one on the right there, the picture on the right, the purple flower around that is actually a purple variegated pepper plant, an ornamental pepper plant. So I thought that was really interesting, and it looks pretty good, I think. And let's say you have a small garden. Most of the time these crinums are going to be kind of big. They're kind of have bold foliage, and when the flower stalk goes up, it's going to make a statement. But we do have, if you have a small garden, there are some, and these are his suggestions of the ones that you might want to try that maybe only top out at 3 feet tall or less. The one in the picture there is the very last one down there, the West Indies Mini, which has only got leaves that are 6 inches long. But you have to remember, if you do try these, you'll probably need to put them in a container and bring them in for the winter time. Some of these will not be cold hardy in zone 6. And then if you have some shade, of course, sure, there's crinums that they'll tolerate shade. You just have to make sure that you get the right species. So there's a list of some there on the left. And of course, the Asian crinums may do better in the shade as well. But you will have to remember, this is still a plant that is powered by the sun. And so when you put a plant in shade, you have to expect less flowers. So keep that in mind if you do want to put these in a more shady location. The list that is there is also from Jinx book that he put out. I have no experience with this, but that's the ones that he says. And of course, when you start trying to get these ones that are more tolerant of shade, you may run into some that are not winter hardy again. So just always keep that in mind. So the one on the left is just a pretty picture of one of Jinx's favorites called Cecil Hooty shell. I don't really know how to pronounce that. He suggested that be the one that I give away to participants in a live program, and that's what I've done. And this one is extremely hardy, and even in zone 5. and it is extremely floriferous, according to him, that it will bloom for a long period of time. But that's some bold foliage there, and that's some tall flowering stalk. So, this is going to be a fairly large plant. The other two pictures are of my grandmother's, and it is, as I said, the milk and wine lily, the Herbertii, we think. But the picture from above, I have counted, this may not be the picture, but I have counted 20 flowers circling around. And that does include the ones that are still in the bud there. So they produce a lot of flowers on one single flower stem. And here's just some pretty pictures of the Palii type, the album, the white one that is very cold hardy as well. Again, these are pretty bold plants. The foliage is pretty nice, but it's bold. And of course, these flower stalks come above the foliage, and so they're tall. And the three pictures on the right are, again, my grandmother's lily, just to give you some, just some more pictures what she looks like there. The one on the left is a bulbospermum that was named Aurora glorialis, and this is one that Jinx Farmer does sell. As far as I know, it's his exclusively, but maybe not. But this is an interesting one. When the flowers first open, they're whitish or tannish, and then as that flower ages, it turns more pink. And so that was kind of interesting. As far as I know, this one would be hardy here in Zone 6, but you're going to pay a lot of money for this one as well. This is, I don't know if it's just limited supply, but on Jinx Farmer website, it was not in my budget. We'll just say that. But, grow them. Pay attention to your hardiness zone. And as we say, as most horticulture agents tell people, somewhere around your home, you may have, a half a zone or even a full zone, warmer location or colder location, depending on which side, which aspect, that kind of thing. But, if you've got a little spot that you think, you can gain an extra half a zone, crinums will fit in. And even if you can't get that zone, we now know we've got some that are hardy in Zone 5. So we certainly can handle that here, those bulbs that are planted in Kentucky. And again, this is the Cecil hootie shell. This is the one my participants got, and there were just more pictures of it. And again, this is the one from Jinx Farmer. He suggested it. And I would imagine he's probably planted and or evaluated more crinum species and cultivars than anybody else in the United States. So when he says that this one flowers the most, I kind of believe him. We didn't talk about cut flowers, but the middle picture there shows cut flowers. And being that they're fragrant, bring those cut stems in. It will really, it'll aromify the room. That's my word, and I'll have to get the dictionary people to pick that up. But anyway, this is the end of the presentation. The main thing is just to grow these things, get them established, and then walk away. And even when your house is old and decrepit, after you're dead and gone, this crinum's still going to be there. And I think it's just a great thing. I love plants that can be handed down from generation to generation. And so these crinums are perfect for that. I love that quote from William Welch, who authored Heirloom Gardening in the South. He said, "No crinum has ever died." I know some people will probably say that's a lie, but I think once you get them established and you have the right one, it's not going to go away. It's going to be there for a long time. So I hope you enjoyed this presentation on crinum lilies. And if you have any questions about them, you're always free to call our extension office, the Pulaski County Extension Office, at 606-679-6361. Thanks a lot.